Welcome back to another episode of Meta Talkz. Very excited about this guest today. I just recently read his incredible book. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. So, welcome, Kate. Welcome, Tommaso. And our guest here, Tommaso DB. I love the last name that you have there, by the way. So Tommaso is a serial entrepreneur, startup investor, author, advisor, faculty at University of California, Berkeley. He's built 4 tech startups from scratch, has 2 exits, and now has a passion for teaching and learning in the Web3 space. Welcome, Tommaso.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Wow, so honored having you here. Tommaso, tell us what gets you excited to get involved in the education in the Web 3.0 world?
Well, I think in general, education in general is broken. Nowadays we are still sticking to the same methods of the way we've been educated for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now for the very first time since invention of technology, right, we have a method in which we can co-create the education, own what we create, and benefit from those micro certificates, because whatever we do in Web3 belongs to us. We don't need third parties to give us a certificate. We don't need anybody to tell us, you made your 4 years degree, right? Yeah, but that's just real quick to why I'm so hooked about the possibilities in general in Web3 and the Metaverse, right?
So what is your definition of the Metaverse, Tommaso?
Well, I don't think that anybody right now should take an attempt of saying what it is, because we are so early on, and we should actually think of what it is not and clarify the misconceptions, right? A couple of things of what we know what it is. It's definitely the future of what we knew as the Web 2, so the internet. But it's also kind of the future of the social media, because we mingle and are all together there. But then we have at the center of all this an economy, so we can own things. So it's also kind of the future of social commerce, or commerce in general, of e-commerce in general, right? So definitely it's not meta, because internet, Google is not the internet. It's definitely not the VR, but it's going to be platform agnostic, right? It's definitely not a trend. Based on statistic, we see that within the next, let's say, 8 to 10 years, it's over 1.5 trillion to $2 trillion market economy, right? So these are all the things what it is not, right, that I like to kind of address as a misconception, right? When you get closer to what is the metaverse, and I like to wrap it up with as of today, right? Actually, let me throw one more thing that is also a big misconception that I hear. Metaverse is not a game, right? So gamers have been, and crypto aficionados have been enjoying gamified environments, right? But definitely it's not a game. As a matter of fact, as long as we look at Web3 and the Metaverse as a game, as a place where we have to log in and get rewarded based on the time that we spend, and we are looking at Web3 opportunities with Web2 lenses, right? Mm-hmm. I believe a lot that Metaverse is an extension of our real life. It's an interconnection with places, people, and products. And at the center of all this interaction with whatever we see around us, literally, right, which will become the access point to the digital world, right, in an augmented way, right. At the center of all this, we will have 2 main characteristics, which would be, one, co-creation. So whatever we have around us, the product, the place, the people, we can allow others to build experiences in those access points, right? And as a consequence of those experiences, we have ownership, because those digital assets, or unique digital assets, nowadays called NFTs, who knows what's called in the future, right? You can co-create them and co-own them, right? So the interest there and the benefit there of those experiences are that you feel a sense of belonging because you collaborate with others by doing things that have similarities, right? And then you no longer spend just your time and you're happy and rewarded because you spent your time, but you actually now created something that you equally own with others. I want to pause here a second.
Yeah, I love that. Tommaso, you've done several exits, and it is an exciting world. And a month ago, I was in a panel in LA, and this guy next to me, maybe it's too much weed, he was talking about Web 4.0. I was like, wait a minute, experts were saying we're not even there yet. So there's definitely a need of education, of people thinking they're already in a Web 4.0 world. It's how are we going to stop that, or what can we do to educate everyone?
Yeah, I mean, all these buzzwords, right? We it's not the first time that we have an innovation cycle, right? The question actually here, if we zoom out a second, is why now? Like, why did this happen right now? And if we zoom out, right, we would, on a high level, assess and see that there are two things that are happening at the same time. On one hand, we have been asking for years now to have more data transparency, to have our data. Like we have seen over the last 18 years that we wanted more systems that we could have a real voice and influence, right? But the underlying technology, the Web 2, was not allowing to give us the data. It was not allowing to have a voice in what we were doing, right? And so in parallel to those needs, right, and this is one pillar, evolving needs, right, the investors and the entrepreneurs, right, of this world, right, they said, well, how can we respond to those needs? And then, blockchain came around, right? And then with blockchain, Ethereum incorporated the ability to create those digital assets, right? And so with that, then the metaverse was activated. So this was a match made in heaven between the evolved needs, and on the other hand, the technology advancement. So this is the reason why this is happening. This is happening right now, right? I mean, we always need to filter those buzzwords, out. Metaverse, Web 4, Web 5. I've also heard things like that, right? I think right now let's concentrate all together of what we can enjoy in this so-called Web 3 world, right? What can we create? We are really at the early beginning of exploring all together what can be done, right? Again, I believe that the biggest attributes here are the ability for all of us to co-create, right? Also composability called, right? So imagine, Kate and Danny, we are all in an experience, in a digital or in an augmented world, right? And now we can all together build a digital product, right? That we all three co-own. So we had this feeling of contributing towards a mission that the three of us like, right? And then at the end of it, it's not just an entertainment, or you didn't just spend your hours in there just for the sake of creating something and then you left, but we also have ownership on it, right? And then we can have it in different other digital or virtual environment, placed and swapped and sold, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get a chance to have a conversation with some of the biggest VC that's really pouring $8 billion of funding in the Web 3.0 space. And they're focusing on the decentralized content creators economy. And that's really wonderful. Dan, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's well, I have a question though for Tommaso. I was just watching CNBC and they were talking about dating in the metaverse. I don't know if you've seen this. It's been a whole topic for a whole week. And I've been talking about this for a few years. And luckily I bought the website dateinthemetaverse.com. So,
curious.
Because I really feel like relationships are going to change. I think throughout history, I'm sure every generation before said that about, emails and chat and webcam, like internet, obviously, relationships have changed. I'm curious on what your thoughts, though, is the future of relationships when it comes to, I think our kids are really, they understand how to have a relationship with someone, like a friend in a space that they've never actually met that person. Where us, it's a little bit different. We started with making friends in real life, and then maybe they transition to a virtual space. But how is it going to be in the future where people are really going to be making a lot of these relationships with not only they don't even know who the person is, the person may be a tree one day and maybe they're a flower the next, or they're not even a human being. Maybe it's literally an AI bot that is very advanced in learning, and you don't even know who or what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the topic of building a relationship in general, right, in the digital world has been already an evolution in transformation over the last decades, right? Now, obviously, when you have more immersiveness, right, and then when you have also a variety of identity, you need to detach then basically, the identity that you have online from the appearance that you have online, right, and interconnect then very contextual, right? So I think that the relationship will be very, I think the best word is contextual. Contextual means where did we meet, in what purpose, with what purpose did we meet, right? Are we playing together? Are we learning together? Are we doing something for the environment together, right, on a digital way, right? And also maybe to an extent we should also be fair in saying, right now when we think of digitally, right, in the version 01 of this world, what's called metaverse, right, of this new era, we are still thinking of something that is either web-based, so we are in a digital environment where the ID and the avatar are purely a character that you can fantasize, right? But there is also an extension to this when we start thinking, okay, how does it look in a world where augmented reality plays a role into that? So it's not just virtual to virtual, right? What if the augmented reality, which in my point of view will be one of the biggest use cases in the metaverse, and the reason why I believe that is because it will be simpler and more seamless. A more seamless approach for people to access the digital world, rather than you being in front of a PC, which requires you have to be there, right? So if you have an augmented reality, you can interact with a variety of characters too, but then the characters are in real life, right? So it's an evolving relationship. We definitely will have, in my point of view, also some mental issues that are created as a result, because you move from there is everything possible to the real life, right? And then you go back and say, wow, now I don't have this strength, I don't have the force, I don't look like that, right? So I think that we definitely see the healthcare industry also playing a huge role in how we want to guide this next generation. I don't know if I answered your question, but very, very intriguing, Daniel.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think.
Yeah, there was at one point we did a forum, and this guy, he actually loves playing his avatar than in real life, and then that's definitely something that an expert can talk about. That's going to be a fascinating world. Like, you would rather be an avatar than in your real person, and that's kind of something that's very difficult.
Yeah,
the therapists will never go away.
I think they will be very busy in the future.
So going back to your saying, Kate, though, about the creator, recently there's a well-known comedian. He bought back his show from Netflix because Netflix wanted to censor some of the things that he didn't. And after he bought it back, he basically doubled his money, which is kind of like one of the first times that someone's ever done this. So you were talking about the creator economy. Where do you see that, Tommaso, in terms of the abilities now where, you have to kind of bend towards the platforms because the platform has the money to give. But if you can skip over that and go directly to the consumer, that seems like it can open up a lot more for people to give as a creator. Also, as a consumer, you can consume things that maybe might have been more controlled by a platform before.
Yeah, I think even the definition of creator needs to be double clicked on. Like, who is the creator in a Web3, right? So you have, I think, a 3 to 4 sided marketplace, because a creator could be the end user. Well, Tommaso, how can the end user be a creator? Because there are a bunch of no coding tools that are coming up that allow you actually to import content, right? And then add additional edits on this content based obviously on the digital worlds and what the digital world support, right? And then from there, what you could also do is invite actual creator designers, more professional designers, but still without the skills of coding, right? So the designers that lean into the design aspects, the professional design aspects, right? And then the third party that also falls into the creator is the actual developers, right? Because you can be in an experience, right? And a developer that has access to SDKs and APIs, so interfaces, right? You can change the environment, you can change the mechanics maybe in which you are in, right? Maybe you want to say you want to gamify those experiences, right? So, and all of a sudden you have already 3 people in there that are creating this experience, either in a digital world, so digital in digital, or in a digital world that is in real life, so digital in physical, if it makes sense, right? And then around this, there is always a certain level of because tokenomics are very relevant, right? The fourth party that is involved, which is the retail investor, right? I mean, assuming that what we have seen, let's say in the first 3-4 last years, that most of the project, as soon as they establish a certain value at the core as a core value proposition, right, they go and launch their tokens. Now the retail investor becomes basically not a direct creator of the experience, but maybe a funder of the experience, because they're there and they invest also the money. That's how I'm looking at the creation. It's all about creation. I actually believe, Dana, to wrap up this question, the more I'm reflecting most recently, I believe that, and this is just an hypothesis and assumption, right? I believe that the reward of you getting a token or a digital asset, an NFT, will soon become an expectation. So where do I want to go with this? So in 5-10 years time, 7 years time, right, we will know that if I join a augmented or a virtual and virtual metaverse, that by doing something, I would be getting something out of it. And this becomes an expectation. So our behaviors will no longer be of surprise, because it will be kind of implied. Once it becomes implied, where is still the surprise, and where do I still have this emotion on joining a metaverse? And that's where I believe in the co-creation becoming and being even bigger than the reward system, right? Because reward equal expectation, but co-creation equal emotion, because surprise. Does it make sense where I'm going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that concept. Especially like we're used to in the current world where we just give our email, we expect 20% off, right? And I love how you're saying that as we're there building a co-creation in the metaverse that will get us excited and building it for the better. And I'm going to segue this, Tommaso, to decentralization in a third world country. I grew up in the Philippines, and the model of, you contribute and it gets spread out to everybody. How is that going to play when there's a class system in a country? I'm very curious about that thought. What's your thought process in that? Do you think it's viable?
First of all, I believe that obviously, and my wife is from Brazil. I was born and raised in the southern part of Europe, which is not necessarily known as the rich side of Europe, right? So in those countries, you always need to have primarily, the prerequisites, which is access and internet, right? Performance. So this is, I think, something that we cannot underestimate. Obviously, there are technologies that might leapfrog, let's say, a linear approach of technology evolution, such as, the DSL, as in the broadband that we have, into 5G. So I think 5G and edge computing will definitely be fundamental to those countries in order to have the pre-requirements then and have access, right? Then at a certain point, I believe that actually the fact of having a system that allows anybody to have and achieve the same value by creating something, I think that this can actually democratize what a person can contribute, right? At the end of the day, at the center of all this, we need always to think of value creation. What is the value that you are building within these worlds, okay, within this new era, right? What is the product? What problem is that? Like let's face it. What problem is this picture, this experience solving? Is it solving the problem of entertainment? Is it solving the problem of education? Is it solving the problem of belonging? Like, what problem is it? Once we focus on problem solving, right, I believe that everybody will have the equal rights and possibilities and opportunities to be a relevant player, not as a gamer, but a player within those environments.
Dan?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of different components, which, to your point about the internet, it's kind of wild thinking where most of us are watching this live, there's probably internet, of course. Otherwise, we can't see this, but there's a lot of places in the world that still don't even have access to the internet. But at the same time, it's really incredible. And that's why, we've talked before about how this could be the biggest global economic shift in our lifetimes, just because there's so many people. And with, like, what is it, Starlink? Is that, Kate? What?
Starlink, yeah.
Yeah, with like Starlink coming out in a lot of places in Southeast Asia at the end of this year. The fact that people will have access to the internet, they have phones. Like you said, many of them have, I've seen 5G on an island where they didn't even have good broadband service, but their phone internet was pretty fast. So they will have the ability to get access to education. So how do you see, since you're in the education space, not only as a professor or teacher, also I know you part of your company is education, which I love. Where do you see that being a component and importance, and how do you see the access of education changing with what you mentioned, the fact that people will have 5G and access on their phones, where 20 years ago when the internet was born, or the internet got started, 30 years ago, most people didn't even have access.
So I'm a big, so maybe also for the audience here, I'm not a professor, just to be, because if that's an allergic could cause some reaction. So I contribute as an entrepreneur to UC Berkeley, teaching entrepreneurship in the space of Metaverse, right? Just for my professor colleagues, right? When you're together, or maybe to directly to your question, right? The YouTubes of this world have actually started the pioneer work of democratizing education for the Web 2, right? I'm chair of the Alma Meta XYZ, which is right now an educational institute, but become an educational metaverse, right? Which I'm funding right now, and with a small but very smart team of entrepreneurs that are running it, right? And we have been now educating in the Web3 realm, right? What does it mean in the Web3 realm? What's the difference between the Web2 and the Web3? So immersiveness for the brain of the humankind is fundamental to digest better information. So once you are immersed, regardless if you are immersed, by the way, I'm not referring to the ability for VR, right? VR is just one immersiveness type, right? But people AAA experiences online, right? Or augmented reality, like you start paying attention to immersiveness in a different way. Okay. And so actually, one of the most recent concepts that I came up as an hypothesis, I believe actually that Web 2 has reached its limits on how we can learn. Because at the end of the day, with the mobile phones, I'm looking here, with the mobile phones today, right? You can just scroll and scroll and scroll, but it's saturated. You don't really learn. You are not paying attention. You do it just because you have a ritual of doing and a habit of doing it, right? But you're not really absorbing something. So if you're really saying about the learning, this has reached its limits, right? I think with the immersiveness, if we do it right, we can now all of a sudden create less content, more qualified, and people will actually learn more. So on one hand, we have the immersiveness spectrum, which allow the humankind to learn more, to enjoy more. And the reason for that is because we're starting touching on all senses. Imagine that you are within the augmented reality, right? You say, wow, this is, or imagine in a future that we have the haptic gloves, right? Or even the haptics skins, right? And then we feel it in our skin, right? Or we listen to the accents of like immersiveness will create different emotions. And once the humankind has emotions, you remember things better. So that's one point of things, right? Then the second part of the learning is because we can start triggering and gamify, not game, gamify, right? So gamify, the explanation of gamify is building in reward systems that are achieving retention and engagement mechanics compared to linear systems that are just, hey, learn and that's it, right? So, you learn per chapter and you can, unlock certain tokens, right? You learn and you can have certain collectibles if you finish the sections, right? And this all of a sudden makes you not only be there because you learn better, but you are now there and learn and you get something. Now, as a last point of this next generation of learning, what I envision is that once you have those digital assets that are on a blockchain, this is value. I mean, this is a unique asset that we can then, do what? We can swap, we can give in donation, we can collect and keep, we can buy out for fiat. Like now, basically, you have this approach of 3 instances of immersiveness, right? Rewarding system, and then the actual output of the outcome of the reward system.
I love that, Dan. I get, when we were in Amsterdam for a conference, a Web3 conference, Tommaso, I was sitting in a sauna and I was meditating in an immersive. I can smell, I can feel the sun. I was like, man, that feels like a high level of meditation right there. I could just picture out the future of education is going to be that immersive. It's going to retain in my brain with all, like you said, we're all so ADD and there's so many stimulation and we can't just focus into one thing. I mean, I buy books all the time and I probably would read the first chapter and there it sits. I could never finish that, but I love that. So that the future of an immersive education way where we get rewarded and all of that, gamifying it, that's very exciting to me. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. The thing that Kate's talking about really was to help people with anxiety and mental health. That's what it was created for. But I can imagine there's so many other use cases of something that really touches all senses. But Tommaso, can you tell us though, how can people hear more? How can they find you? What should people look at? I love your name too. Awesome Ventures. I use it a lot, so tell us.
Yeah, so for what I've been doing at UC Berkeley is co-create. I call it co-creating, not teaching, co-creating Web3, learning together with brilliant minds. So the first semester, we created 12 projects and startups in the Web3 and the Metaverse space. And I've been getting more and more a demand of, bringing this knowledge also into the public market, which we did through almameta.xyz. We created a course for non-technical professionals, right? And it's a self-paced course. Actually, the course comes with a certificate and it comes with a community. So for those out there who would like to learn more about how to get into the metaverse, what risks do you need to assess for the metaverse? What is the metaverse today, and what's the big picture in order to reverse engineer, specifically for brands, departments that want to get into the metaverse? That's kind of the target audience we created it for. It's roughly 6 hours, so you can go on almameta.xyz, right? Obviously, I am part of the Awesome Venture Fund. So for those early stage startup, please go on awesome.ventures or awesome.xyz and submit your application there, right? And if you think that you need some external wind to create some contrast to what the metaverse is, I do keynotes quite a lot right now, especially to the very recent book that I had the pleasure to co-author with Kathy Hackle and Dirk Bluth, right? Which is called Navigating the Metaverse, published in May by Wiley. Happy to contribute to this world of Web3 and humbly learning one chat at a time.
Really exciting.
Incredible. Thank you, Tommaso. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Honored to have